Welcome to Discovering. It's the night before Christmas. Tomorrow, many of you will be sitting around a table full of delicious Christmas dinner. In an effort to help build up your appetite, tonight we'll do a little cooking.
But today we're going to make a blueberry balsamic pheasant. Pheasant reminds me of my dad.
First, we'll take a look at do-it-yourself European mounts.
Really anyone can do this, if you just try it out.
Stick around, that's all tonight, right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill, the eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
There's certainly no shortage of do-it-yourselfers in the UP, or hunters. Put the two together, add in a few household tools, a small amount of effort, and you've got a done-it-yourself European mount.
In 2009, I got my first compound archery buck. And it wasn't very big, so I didn't want to make a mount, have it mounted. So I thought, what the heck? I had to memorialize it some way. And I thought, well, European mounts were starting to get popular. So I thought, I'm going to try that. I had never done it, didn't look anything up. I just thought, well, I should be able to do that. So I took the head and skun the head out. That was the first thing you had to do. I figured you at least have to do that. After I skun it out, I got a big pot and filled it with water and basically just stuck the skun out head in that pot and started boiling it. Little did I know that you really should try to take off as much meat ahead of time as possible. But I started boiling it, and after it was all said and done, it turned out really nice. And I was like, wow, I'm surprised, so I can do that. I was pretty confident. Hey, that's great. I was able to do it. And so then the next year I got a buck and I'm like, oh, I have to do that again. And this one turned out, some of the bones fell out, the teeth got loose on some of them. I actually overboiled it. So that's kind of how I got into it. And I wasn't grossed out by it. It was just so interesting, all the intricate structures of the skull and the nasal cavity and how much connective tissue is in there and how interesting, you're just like, wow. And from one buck to another, how the heads look different. They're not all the same. One can have a petite little head and another can have a big Roman nose. So it's just been kind of interesting, seeing the different bucks and how different they can look. Just put the whole head in a pot of water, 4 hours, I would say. The water, you want to come up right to even here because you're trying to keep that cap there. You want to get that underwater too. And sometimes you don't necessarily, and it'll kind of steam off the flesh there. It'll steam. Try not to get your horns under the water at all. So like right here is almost perfect. And you have a nice steady boil. There's no secret or there's no key that I found was any better. And I think each time I do it, it's not the exact same. So don't worry about that. Just know that when you're boiling it, have a nice steady boil. Keep the horns out of the water, but keep as much water as you can to try to cover the whole head. And you can see right now, if you pull it out, how the flesh is coming off and how the tissue looks, it's breaking down. And that's from that sodium carbonate, helping to break it down. Now I would take one of my little tools and just pull some of that off and let that, keep pulling it off and working on it. After it's boiled and you've gotten off most of the meat, you still need to pick out all the little connective tissue and still work on some of the nasal tissue because you might not get all of that out. And some people take out the eyes too. I haven't, but I think if I take out the eyes, it'll just help it go a lot faster. This hasn't been boiling long enough really, because if it's boiled enough, if I pull on this cartilage here, it would all just slip right out. But it's coming along because you've got all of that the roof of the mouth there, that will just slough off. Once it gets boiled enough, this gets really, it just breaks down, it kind of mushes up and you can get it right off. But this has to go a while yet. Let the boil do most of the work because it will really boil that meat right off. And I think like where you can't really get at very well, like in the, where you have all the nerves and stuff from the teeth, by boiling it well, it breaks it down inside because you can't pick that out. You know, most of this stuff you could probably find in your kitchen. You probably have maybe an old bread pan or a wash pan. I use this when I'm doing some of the final cleanup of it. You have most of the meat and the tissue is sloughed off. You still have to pick away little cartilage and things like that, so you need to pick it up. So you need some type of a tray to help hold things as you're picking things away. If your water ended up with really greasy, you can take your Dawn dish soap or Palmolive, anything, make some sudsy water and just kind of suds it up in the water. Get some of the grease off. Take a toothbrush, scrub away some of the skin and the extra tissue. I have another thing that really has worked great. It's an old metal crocheting needle. It has a little tiny hook at the end of that. And this has been great for getting into small crevices. It has like I said, it has a little hook on the end of it, so you can get in there and you can pull out the different tissue and the connective tissue. And I mean, I don't know what other kind of specialized tools you have, but that sure works good. And then I have, I think this is an automotive ring puller, but it's again another long utensil that you can kind of get down into the brain cavity to work away the different membranes and clean it up and get stuff out of there. And then I have these that really works to get deep down in and pinch and gather on the membrane and pull out the different membrane. And the brain, when you're trying to work the brain out, after you've boiled it for a while, you'll have to tip it upside down and dump out brain, get in there and then pull the membrane out and then dump it out. I've seen or heard people do power washing. I've never done that, but I think that would probably, if you want to put a whole bodysuit on and power wash your skull, that would probably be a quicker way. But this way, it's stuff you might have in your house. And you can just pick away at it, clean up the skull, clean up all the connective tissue. The nasal cavity here is really difficult to get a lot of stuff out of. Just these tweezers. And I can get in and pull the different nasal tissue out of there, because you want to get as much of that out of there as possible, because otherwise, you know, you might end up with a smell. And you can also get into the brain cavity as well with that. Just some cheap wood carving tools. There's a lot of cartilage and stuff that you have to work off, and this helps get that off. So that's another little helpful tool. This is a sodium carbonate. I put about a cup of this in the boiling water, and it helps make the tissue just break down and get gelatinous, and it comes off, sloughs off easier. You know, anything that you might have laying around. The first head that I did, I think I had a screwdriver and tweezers. That worked for my first try. I didn't have, like I said, any specialized tools, and I wouldn't call these really specialized tools either, but it's just some things that, after I had, worked on a skull, I'm like, what would be helpful? And I said to my husband, I need something really long and with, like a needle nose pliers, and the needle nose pliers were always too thick. You couldn't get into the little hole here. So we found these. I think these were originally for ice fishing. You got to get that hook out of the fish's mouth, right? Well, it works perfect for pulling the brain membrane out. You can get really deep in there with these. So the small, narrow shank that you can get in there. So again, it's what do you have at home? You probably have enough that could get you started and be able to do a nice head. You boil it, take off all the tissue that you can, clean out all the connective tissue, so you have a skull like this. And I put it in my pan, and if you want to make it even brighter white, you can just spray some peroxide on there. come back, let it dry, spray some more, just leave it for a couple days and just keep doing that. And it helps whiten it up a little bit, but it doesn't make it super white. It looks, just more of a natural bone white. So, and that's pretty much the end of the process. You've cleaned all the tissue off of the head, you let it dry, and that's your final product.
Plenty of hunting behind us, there's a good chance we've got some wild game tucked away in the freezer. I stopped in for a visit with Mary Malnor to see what kind of twist she could put on a couple of pheasant breasts.
All right, we've got a whole pheasant breast here. Pheasant reminds me of my dad. My brothers used to go out bird hunting and come home, and my dad always made either a pheasant stew or we'd put it on biscuits. But today we're going to make a blueberry balsamic pheasant. So the first thing I'm going to do is crank this up and get this nice and hot. We don't really even have to trim this. This is just beautiful. Going to get this going really, really hot and get some oil in there. We're going to use a combo of safflower, avocado, and coconut because we get a really high smoke point on this. Now this is a heavy-duty enameled cast iron, so it's nice and heavy and hot. And what that does is once this heats up, the outside, it's almost like a pressure cooker or a crock pot, because once this all heats up, it retains the heat. And then we're going to put this in the oven and it'll cook down really, really quick. I'm going to cut up a couple of onions, some mushrooms. We've got some mushrooms and some carrots we're going to put in there. This recipe, I've done this with beef, I've done this with chicken, I've done it with pork. I've done it completely vegetarian and left out any meat at all and just used really big portobello mushrooms, which kind of have a meaty texture. We're going to just big chunk the onions. We've got some organic sliced white. You could use a whole mushroom and then just quarter them if you wanted to. I'm going to go with the sliced mushrooms because the pheasant's a little bit delicate. We're not using a beef, so it'll all kind of cook down about the same time. And then we're going to use just one big clove of garlic. Some fresh ground pepper and some Himalayan pink salt. So we've got our breast seasoned. We're just going to kind of get a nice quick sear on that. Oh, this is beautiful. Look at the nice sear we're getting on this. That's what's nice about cast iron is look at this. I can get it really, really nice and hot, and I can get a beautiful sear on the meat. And I've got it right on a little bit more than medium high. And then we're going to take that out and get the rest of the vegetables in there. We're going to do the onions, the mushrooms, put some carrots in, and then I've got some beautiful little Yukon Gold potatoes. And we're going to just quarter those and put those in, make a nice stew, put it in the oven, and wait for that to get done. We've got a beautiful sear on both of these breasts. Oh, look at this color. We're going to put a little bit more oil in, and then we're going to start on the vegetables. So I'm going to put in the mushrooms. And I like to do the mushrooms first because those will release a little bit of moisture. And so we don't want a lot of liquid in there right away. I kind of want to sear these also. Again, when I do this, makes me think of my dad. My dad used to go out mushroom hunting and come home and we would cook them up with mushrooms and onions and just eat them with butter. So you could do this with morels, shaggy manes, chanterelles, any mushroom. The morels would be really, really good to do it with the vegetarian version where you just load it with a lot of mushrooms and vegetables. Okay, let's get our onions in here. And we're just gonna thinly slice our giant garlic. There we go. Get that in there. And then I've got some beautiful rainbow carrots that we're going to be using. So I've got some purple, some orange, and just big chunks. And just let these cook down a little bit. So we're going to be layering the flavors again. We're going to be salting, peppering each layer as we go. The salt helps the mushrooms and the onions and the vegetables release a little bit of moisture as well. Let those cook, and I'm going to get some potatoes ready. Okay, look at these beautiful potatoes. We're just going to cut them in. The larger ones we're going to cut in half. These little ones we can just leave. Nice small. So all you have to do is either half them or quarter them. Sometimes the little ones like this you don't even have to cut up. And they all cook down really, really nice. The Yukon Golds have a nice real buttery consistency when they come out. All right, let's get our potatoes in here and we'll get started on our sauce. Potatoes can take a lot of salt, so we're gonna do one more layer of salt and pepper. I'm gonna put in some pre-cut sun-dried tomatoes. And what these will do is these are gonna help tenderize the breasts a little bit, so the meat will be really nice and soft and tender. And I like the tart flavor of the dried tomato. I just love that addition. Can of tomato paste. I'm gonna use my mom's trick for tomato paste. The whole thing comes out. We're gonna put a cup of veggie broth in here. You could use, if you were using beef or venison, you could use beef broth. I'm just gonna use the veggie broth. And then, I don't have any wild blueberries because there weren't very many around here this year. So I'm gonna use some frozen blueberries. 2 cups. And these are gonna melt down and make the sweetest, most amazing gravy ever. And then 1/2 cup of balsamic vinegar. It's gonna be amazing. Just amazing. This combination is just beautiful. Just beautiful in here. Get that stirred up. We'll put the breast back in, and then this is going in the oven. I'm gonna do 2 drops of rosemary oil. I like the floral bouquet that it adds. And then I'm gonna do just a handful of dried rosemary. You could use fresh in here, just put a sprig of fresh rosemary in. About a teaspoon. And let's get our pheasant back in here. Okay, and we want to nestle these guys right down in here. And this is going to go in the oven at about 425 for about 30 minutes. Then we'll check it and see if we need to adjust the temperature. I like to go about 400, 425 for this. It'll heat the pot up really, really good. There we go. Oh my God, this smells amazing. Okay. So you can see the blueberries are starting to melt down. We're getting a nice thick gravy here. This has only been in for about 20 minutes right now. We'll test the vegetables in a little bit. I'm gonna turn these over. You won't even know that there's blueberries in here when we're done, except for the flavor. The vegetables will soak that all in. The gravy it's just beautiful. Okay, so we're at about 400 now, so we'll let that go for about another 30 minutes, and then we'll take it out and we'll check the vegetables and we'll check the pheasant, see if everything's done. Okay, let's see how our vegetables and our pheasant breasts are doing. And we're just gonna see. I just want to see if these are fork tender, knife tender, so I can get in here so I don't have any hard potatoes. My pheasant. I think we're ready to plate this. You ready to eat? All right, let's get some of this pheasant stew, balsamic pheasant stew plated. So we've got carrots and onions, some potatoes. Let's get a little bit of this pheasant. And there you go.
Well, that's it for tonight. I'd like to thank you for watching and wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. I'll leave you with a trip to the Antique Village at the fairgrounds in Escanaba for the annual old-fashioned festive atmosphere of Christmas in the Village.